Hi, I'm David Hakimi with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and I'm here today with Kim Clancy of Mindful Mortgage.
Hi, David.
Hey, Kim.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So, guys, we're going to finish up our series. It's a 3-part series on ways to win in Denver's market. So we hope you enjoy it. And again, if you have any questions, we're always standing by to help.
Yeah, I answer my phone 7 days a week, nights and weekends. I know Kim answers pretty close to the same, so feel free to call us. Our numbers and email are shown below. Feel free to reach out if you need our help on anything. Let's get going. All right, the next one would be escalation clauses, number 8. Escalation clauses are a super common tool for buyers in this market because they do 2 things. They protect you from getting outbid, and they protect you simultaneously from overpaying. So it's a pretty cool clause that we can put in that basically makes sure that your offer is exactly as strong as it needs to be without being any stronger than it needs to be, because nobody wants to give a seller $10,000 or $20,000 more than they need to, if they don't have to. So essentially what an escalation clause is, it's verbiage that basically says our offer is $500,000. However, we will beat any bona fide competing offer that you receive by $2,000 up to a level of $550 or $570 or whatever arbitrary number they set as the max they would feel comfortable paying for that house. So we basically build this clause in so that it escalates us above any competitor's offer that comes in, but it only does it at a controlled amount so that we don't, way overpay for the house. Exactly. So you need to determine your max, and some listing agents hate them though. That's the other issue with it. You got to be careful, and this comes back to item number 1, that buyer's agent needs to call the listing agent and ask those questions. And one of the questions I ask is, are you okay with escalation clauses? In fact, some agents are so adamantly against them that they'll put it in the instructions on the MLS listing that says, do not submit escalation clauses, we don't want them. And I can see why to some listing agents that's a smart strategy, because of course they want to lure that one offer in and force them to pay too much. So if they don't allow an escalation clause, and they say, look, we just want your highest and best, I may have you give highest and best. And if my buyer says, we really want this place, we're willing to bid up to $550 on it, and the next best thing they got was $520, with an escalation clause, we would have wanted it $522 without an escalation clause, we had to pay $550 for it. So we may have gone $28,000 over the next highest offer because the listing agent is keeping us in the dark. So you got to be careful that we make sure before we use an escalation clause that we have a listing agent that's okay with it.
Okay.
The next one, number 9, would be an appraisal gap provision. So this is a really big one, and it comes back, it ties into the escalation clause. So typically a listing agent, when they put a house on the market, let's say they look at the comparables, they do their due diligence, and they determine they're going to put an asking price of $500,000. They're doing that because they've looked at the comparable sales in the area, and they know that the similar recent comparable sales were all around $500,000, and they know that those are the sales that are going to show up on the appraisal. The appraisers are required to take the 5 closest, most recent, most similar sales and determine value, through a series of formulas that they use in the appraisal that will take those sales into account. So it's usually safe to say that if you get an experienced listing agent, they know how to price. They're going to put their price pretty close to where they know it will appraise. However, in this market where everything's going way above asking price with bidding wars, the appraisal gap provision becomes huge. Because if I'm a listing agent and I've priced this thing at $500 and I field an offer of $550 or $575, to me, if there's not written verbiage put into the additional provisions that guarantees that they're going to bring me enough extra cash. So if I'm right on my pricing, and sure enough, my appraisal comes back at $500, but they've offered me $550, the loan's just not going to go any higher than a percentage, that the preset, percentage of what the appraisal comes back at. So the appraisal gap provision basically says, look, we know it may only appraise at $500. We've offered $550. We're going to bring you our $50,000, which was our 10% down, or our $100,000, which was our 20% down, whatever their down payment was. But we also have the additional $50,000 that we can bring to the table to cover the gap between what they'll lend on it based on the appraisal and what our offer was. So those escalation clauses are pretty crucial, and really without them, any offer that exceeds asking by anything substantial is just going to be viewed as pie in the sky or a fluffy offer. It doesn't really mean anything. Number 10, the next item is going to tie back to that, and that's financial statements. Everybody knows that you need to accompany your offer with a loan with a lender letter, but one of the things I see as a listing agent, when I've got 10 or 15 offers and I'm trying to review them by a deadline, and I've got some that have expiration deadlines that are rapidly approaching, and I'm trying to hash through these things quickly, it's really helpful when the agents, especially the ones that have an appraisal gap provision, include the financial statements with the offer that shows me that their folks actually have that extra $50,000 or $70,000 to cover the down payment and the appraisal gap. Because obviously, at the end of the day, if it comes down to it that they need it and they don't really have it, that offer was pie in the sky. It doesn't matter. So a good listing agent is actually going to vet that top offer and make sure that it's backed up with financials to back up what they're putting into the offer. If those financials are included with the file, can't tell you how many times I had 5 offers out of 15 that were all in the running. The top 5 were super tight, but some of them I'm having to try and beg for financials. Others, the financials are there. Others, the financials are a little sketchy or they're incomplete. And I can tell you that automatically I'm going to default to the one that came in the tightest with the best presented financials, where I didn't have to look for anything. I didn't have to figure anything out. I didn't have to read between the lines on anything. It was all there. It was right there, ready to go. I didn't have to ask for it, dig through it, figure it out. So the tighter the financials come across with the offer, the more attractive it's going to be to a listing agent when they have a big stack of offers that they're comparing.
Well, I'm glad you're telling me this, because I mean, you and I only work on buy sides together,
on buy side together.
And so when you said this, I was like, I've never done that. I never thought to actually do that. To be. But now
you definitely need to be.
Well, that's now I will.
Big factor.
Yeah.
If they'll give you permission to redact the account info and send over those financials, that's just one extra step to make those offers even tighter and easier to take in and digest as a listing agent when you're comparing a big stack.
Awesome.
Number 11 would be paying extra fees for the seller. So typically closing costs, as you know, as a lender, are mostly related to obtaining the loan. Seller has very few. The seller pays commission to the agents, which is usually split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. So that's why buyers, at least now under the current system, don't have to directly compensate their buyer's agent. It's just built into the price they pay for the house and charged to the seller by the listing agent and split between the two agents. So of course that seller has those to contend with. Then they're going to have taxes that are due from however long in the year they've occupied the house up through closing. You can probably speak a little bit better. They
give that as a credit back to the buyer.
So you're gonna have, but the seller does have to pay the part that's due up until the day of possession. So you're gonna have commissions as a seller to pay. You're gonna have the taxes to pay, and then every transaction in Colorado typically has 2 title policies. Am I correct? The seller has to take out a title policy that ensures clear title to the buyer, and then the buyer takes a title policy that ensures clear title to their lender.
Correct.
Typically, the buyer pays for the one that insures the lender, but the seller pays for the one that insures the buyer. However, if you're looking for one extra thing you can do to strengthen your loan, you can basically say, look, as buyer, we'll pay that title policy as well. So that'll take anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 off, depending on the price of the house. They're on a graduated scale. You'd probably be a little more familiar with exactly where they come in. We'll actually put in the description a link to a title rate sheet so you can get an idea of kind of where those breakdowns come and get an idea of what that is. But usually it's somewhere around $1,500 to $2,000. As a buyer, you can opt to pay that for the seller. It'll help them pocket a little bit more money. There's also a few little things, like we pay
a closing fee
to the title company. It's usually pretty minor. It's like $350 to $375 total. Buyer and seller split it, but if you really wanted to go the extra mile, you could say we'll cover the whole thing as buyers so that you don't have to pay any of those extra fees. So that's one of the additional things you can do, is pick up some of those costs. You could even go a step further if you really want to get aggressive and say we'll actually compensate our own buyer's agent. So you could pay some of the buyer's agent's commission and say, your seller doesn't have to split that much out. You can take what would have been, 1% of the 3 that you were offering to us, and we're going to cover part of our own agent's commission. That extra 1% that they're not having to pay out can go back to the seller's additional proceeds. So there's a few creative things you can do. Paying extra stuff that would normally be on the seller side, you can pick it up as a buyer, and that'll strengthen your offer as well. So the final one, number 12, is going to be what we've talked about a few times. It's going to be the quality of your agent and the quality of your lender. And I know this seems maybe like a shameless self-promotion, but it's not. I mean, I can tell you the lender matters. The local lender with a good reputation, when they call me, if I hear a name that I know and that I've fielded several successful deals with, and they've always been smooth and they've never missed deadlines, and they know what they're doing, those tend to, come across much stronger in my eyes than one that has an out-of-state bank, a .com lender, somebody with salaried loan officers. Those are all the situations I see as a listing agent, and I cringe a little bit. And real briefly, I'll touch on why we cringe on it. Colorado is a wet-funded state. we're one of the few, I believe, right? We're probably the only, I think.
I don't think the only, but I think there's maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, out of 50 states, there's maybe 5 or 6 that are wet funded. What wet funding means is that we don't close in escrow. So when we show up for closing, it's not like we're just opening escrow and now the lender and everybody else can take their time to hash things out and then they'll call us when they're done and we can attend to final funding. Not how it works here. In Colorado, our contract is very date sensitive and deadline sensitive. In fact, the Colorado contract, you can see a big section of it are all these date and deadline boxes. Quite a few of these have to have performance goals that the lender has to meet, and if the lender doesn't get the appraisal back in time, or if we don't get the title back in time, or if we don't get out of underwriting in time, any one of those can delay the closing, and they can either blow the closing because they can put you in default of the contract, or you may be subject to fines for delaying the closing because one of the provisions in the Colorado contract can be every day that we fail to hand over possession or delay the closing. It's more on builder deals if you delay the closing, but you can incur a daily per diem fine if you go over that line. That goes back to why I don't like out-of-state lenders. If only 5 out of 50 states close wet funded, it means most lenders, they're used to dealing with states where everything can happen in escrow, so they're a lot sloppier because they don't have to perform in line with the dates and deadlines on the Colorado contract. So that's why, as a listing agent, I always want to see a Colorado lender. And I always want to see an experienced Colorado lender that I know does a lot of deals, and not just refis. That's the thing. There's loan officers out there that do a ton of business, but it's all just refinances. So they're never dealing with the dates and deadlines in the contract. So you can have the most experienced refi loan officer ever, and they don't know what they're doing when they get a purchase.
Well, I mean, because on a refinance, I mean, the manpower, I can do 25 refinances for every 5 purchases. And that's the truth.
So there's 5 times more work on a purchase loan.
5 times because people are moving money or people are doing this, and you have all these dates and you do not want to miss
You don't want to miss those dates. Missing those dates can be the kiss of death.
Yeah.
So having a lender that the listing agents know and is a known quantity that has a good reputation locally, they're a local lender, they're a Colorado lender, it speaks volumes. So that I can't understate how overstress how important that is. And then the next one, the agent. Having an agent that is a known quantity, that's well known in the agent community, that doesn't cause extra drama on the file, that doesn't over agent the file. That's a term my partner and I like to use because we see it a lot. A lot of times we'll get an agent that wants to prove just what their worth is to their buyer, and the buyer may only be asking for A, B, and C, but this agent wants to prove how great they are, and they say, no, we need to ask for D, E, and F as well. And they start trying to interject all this extra layers of BS just to prove how great they are to their buyer when the buyer didn't even really want that. And I've seen agents like that actually derail a deal. I had one agent on an inspection. It was back when we were in a little bit more level market and things were still being inspected. They were asking us to relocate a sewer line that ran under a piece of sidewalk because they said if it ever has to be repaired and it goes under the sidewalk, it needs to be in a more convenient location. And we're thinking the sewer line's fine.
It was built that way.
It was built that way. It can be fixed that way. You tear a little piece of the sidewalk out if it comes to it. Come to find out, when we sent our second expert back in, the sewer line didn't even run under the sidewalk where that agent thought it did. Needless to say, that agent became a huge pain in the butt, and we finally got to a point where we reached a stalemate in the inspection and the deal fell apart. So I can tell you that if I ever see an offer come across from that agent again, do you think I'm going to take it? So the agent, your buyer's agent's reputation goes a long way. You need to make sure you've got somebody that's a known quantity with good reviews. I mean, if you look us up on Google or Zillow, I think I've got over 225 5-star reviews with like a 4.9 out of 5 rating, over 200 reviews. So we work really, really hard to do a good job for our clients, not to miss anything, not to blow up deals unnecessarily. And I think most of the rest of the agent community who's dealt with us understands that. I know there have been a lot of times when we submit an offer and we win and they're like, we know who you are, we want to work with you again. We remember how smooth it was the last 3 times. That's what we want again. We want to make sure this gets to the closing table without unnecessary drama. So can't overstress how important the choice of lender and the choice of agent are. Hey, if you like what you've seen today, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you get notified on future videos. We're going to turn these out on a regular basis now. We'd love to have more subscribers. Click that link, and if you want to refer to any of the materials that we talked about, they're down in the description below. And you're also going to see a link to apply with Kim Clancy if you want to apply for a mortgage with Mindful Mortgage. Her application link is there, as well as my phone number and my email address are here in the video. Feel free to call me. I answer my phone 7 days a week. Nights, weekends, holidays are even good. If you're relocating to the Denver area or if you're looking to buy here, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to work with you. look us up. Let's talk. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.